This is a cast of one of my most recent full-size pieces. I sculpted her in clay from a live model. I call her Serenity. I started with a small maquette, and once I was happy with the idea and I felt it would work, I was ready to start on the full scale. This idea sat on the shelf along with probably a dozen or so others for several years while I got on with making a living. Eventually, it was a gallery owner that was selling so many of the small maquettes. He decided to put up half of the funding for me to complete the full-size work. I've had some fun with the technology and made a short film here in time-lapse photo style. So you should be able to get an idea of how I go about creating her. My skeleton was measured from a live model, but then I tinkered with the proportions to get the feeling that I wanted to express in the figure. For example, I reduced the rib cage and lengthened the legs, give more space to the joints, and slightly increased the size of the joints, made them a bit more dramatic. And the hands and the feet, I moved them away from the natural size to give just a little bit more dramatic effect. I always work from skeleton and fixed bones, then to ligaments and muscle, and then fat and texture. Of course, when you cast stone or wood, you're working completely in reverse and start from the block, or work with the masses and the bulk shapes and then refine to the finished surface. I like both methods, but in this way the clay is much faster and more expressive. make sure the weight of my rib cage is correct before I fix the position of my arms, and then I move on to the hip bones. As you go along, you'll see that I'm constantly re-establishing my centre lines.
Roughing out the figure is probably my favourite part. I like to get all the things in place and the feeling and move the clay. I particularly like working clay. I've worked wood and stone and wax, and all have their own beauty. But for figurative sculpture, I particularly like clay because you can really move fast and get the feeling of something very, very quickly.
But of course, I don't actually work quite this fast. I sculpt the legs to an almost finished state, even though I intend to cover most of the bottom half with drapery. This might seem like it's a bit fanatical, but the brain does pick up the subtle difference and will make all the difference when I put my drapery on, and then it will look convincing and as though there's a real voluptuous shape hidden beneath a thin layer of fabric. I do that by letting the clay of the figure go quite hard, and then when I work the softer clay over the surface, I can make it very smooth without losing my shape underneath, you see. I mean, in truth, it's all out the bag of clay, so it is an illusion.
I love working from a model. Well, you can't beat working from a live model. I mean, I've had to work from photographs, and when you work commercially you have to work pretty fast, and you can't just get a model on tap like that. We had to arrange this, and it was really lovely, and it's a lovely kind of sharing that we have together, and to make this kind of sculpture together. It's lovely. You won't be able to see her in shot there, but pretty much most of the time Amy is modelling for me, and the time that I had to do this was actually around Christmas time, so it was pretty damn cold. We tried to keep her as warm as possible, but it's not always easy, especially in a large unit type space. But she's very brave.
There's definitely a very careful balance to be drawn between freezing your model or drying out the clay and cracking the sculpture. In this shot